Hey gang, and welcome back. These videos are brought to you by Card Conduit, the best place to sell your unused collection fast and easily. 401 Games, Canada's top shop for all your hobby and TCG needs. Dragon Shield, the strongest sleeves for your strongest decks. Moxfield, the easiest way to store and share your deck lists. And Foil Armor, flattening your foils fast. I win the die roll and start us off. I play a mountain and pay 1 for a Wayfarer's Bauble. Max has a spectator seating which comes in untapped, and he taps it for a red for Faithless Looting, drawing 2 and discarding 2. Metchu just plays an island. Arja's got a swamp and follows my example with his own bauble and passes to me. I play an island and then pay 2 to crack the bauble, going to find a basic. Max takes 2 for an untapped Stomping Grounds and then casts Bard Class and passes. Metchu has a Plains for turn, and pays 2 for an Argent Dais. Arja's got a Plains, and casts Charitable Levy, passing after it resolves. My main phase is quite quick, as I'm missing a land drop, and just cast a Changeling Outcast. Max draws, but has no land for turn, and instead uses his mana to level up Bard Class. Metchu plays a Plains, and pays 2 for an Arcane Signet, paying the levy tax and passing. Arja's got an Opal Palace, and then brings out Ayli. During his end step, I flash out Fairy Mastermind. I draw for turn and still can't find a land, but I do cast Ludwig to help incentivize my opponents to attack each other. I then swing at Arja for 1 with a Changeling, and he can't block. I then move to my end step, drawing from Ludwig's trigger. Max needs pay only 2 for Layla in his main phase, who comes in with a +1/+1 counter from the Bard class. He swings her at Arja, exiling his top card from her on attack trigger, and Arja takes the hit. We then move to Max's end step, and he gets to draw a card from Ludwig, which means I get to draw a card from the Fairy Mastermind, because Max has drawn 2 cards. Metchu's got an island for turn, and then taps enough for his commander with Sokrates, or Sokrates depending on how you pronounce it. Arja's got a Midnight Reaper in his main phase, and he goes to combat, swinging Ayli at Max. She connects, and Arja passes to his end step, drawing because of Ludwig, and I draw from the Mastermind trigger. My turn has an Exotic Orchard coming in, which I thankfully just drew despite having drawn so many cards before, and I go to combat and swing the Fairy and Changeling at Arja, dealing 3. My second main phase then has me casting Solemn Simulacrum, and I go and find a land, and Metchu remembers to add a counter to his dais. Moving to my end step, I draw from Ludwig after shuffling. Max draws and still can't find a land, but feels attacked when we ask him why. He swings Layla at Arja, exiling his top card before she connects, and is able to cast a reduced costing Arba's Mirror, dealing 1 to his opponents and gaining 1. He then moves to his end step, drawing a card, and I draw a card as well. Metchu plays an island and just passes like a dirty control player. Arja's got a command tower for turn, and in his main phase, cracks his bauble to go and find a tapped swamp. He then casts a Cruel Celebrant and passes. My turn has an Ancient Tomb coming in, and I take 2 by tapping it to help cast Sauron. Going to combat, Arja gets hit with my Changeling, and this has the ring tempt me, and I make the Mastermind my ring bearer. Going to my end step, I draw from Ludwig. Max draws for turn and goes straight to combat again. He swings Layla at me this time, exiling his top card and pumping Layla. I block with Solemn, drawing as it goes to the graveyard. Max then plays a Snow-Covered Forest for turn, which he'd presumably drawn, and taps enough for Miglaw's Maze Crusher. This deals 1 to each opponent from Arbaz, and he gains 1, and Sauron also triggers, and I get to put a counter onto my Changeling. Max then passes, and during his end step, he draws from Ludwig, because Arbaz has pinged his opponents, and I draw a card from the Mastermind as well. Metchu's got a Plains for turn, and then taps 7 mana to hardcast a Null Drifter. He draws 2, which has me drawn from the Mastermind, and Sauron also triggers, and I put a counter onto my Changeling. Arja's main phase has him playing a Plains, and then bringing out Lurrus, and then casting the bauble from his graveyard once Lurrus is out. This triggers Sauron, and I put a counter onto my Changeling. My turn has a steam vents coming in, and I take 2 so it comes in untapped. I then move to cast Kaya's ghost form and put it onto Sauron, but Max responds by casting Path to Exile and targets my commander. He has a ward trigger to resolve, and sacrifices Arbaz. Sauron then gets exiled, but I do follow up with a Dreadhorde invasion. Going to combat, the Changeling goes at Arja since we know he has combos, and the Fairy Mastermind goes at Max. Moving to my end step, I then draw a card from Ludwig. Max draws and goes to combat, swinging Layla at me and Migloz at Mathieu. He exiles his top card, and before damage, Mathieu activates Sokrates to prevent the damage Migloz would deal to him so that he and Max can draw. I then take the hit, and Max and Mathieu draw 2 cards, which has me drawing 1 twice from the Mastermind. At this point, Arja realizes the levy would have popped off as well, and we resolve it while Max goes about his turn still. Max then takes 2 for an untapped Sacred Foundry, and then brings out Alexios. He then casts Plarg, Dean of Chaos. Max then passes, and draws from Ludwig during his end step. Mathieu's turn has him adding a counter onto Alexios, drawing and going to combat. He swings Alexios at me, and the Null Drifter goes at Arja. And before moving to blockers, Arja has to resolve the Annihilator trigger. He sacrifices the Celebrant, draining each of his opponents for 1, which results in a neutral life gain because Arja loses 1 and draws a card from the Reaper. We then take the hits, and Mathieu's second main phase has him casting a Tenuous Truce onto Max. He then moves to his end step, drawing a card from Ludwig, and I get to draw as well from the Mastermind trigger. Alexios gets passed to Arja and gains a counter, and Arja casts Sign in Blood in his main phase, drawing 2, and I get to draw a card as well. We then see the Ranger Captain of Eos, and this allows him to tutor for an Esper Sentinel, which Arja then casts. Going to combat, Alexios goes at me, and Lurrus goes at Mathieu. This ticks up the dice again, and we both then take our hits, with Arja gaining 3. Arja then goes to his end step, and having caused his own life loss, still triggers Ludwig. My upkeep has me gaining Alexios, and giving him a counter, and then losing 1, and adding another counter onto my army/changeling from the Dreadhorde invasion. I then draw for turn, and play a Drowned Catacombs, and then cast Demonic Tutor, paying the 1 for the Sentinel tax. Going to combat, Alexios goes at Mathieu, the Changeling at Max, and the Mastermind at Arja. Mathieu activates Sokrates to prevent the damage, and have us draw instead, while Max and Arja take their beatings. My second main phase then has me casting what I think is the coolest spell in the deck, with a Widespread Brutality. And speaking of board wipes, I'd be curious to hear what your favorite board wipe is in the comments down below. Unfortunately for me though, Mathieu plays an Offer You Can't Refuse, which draws Arja a card, as he doesn't pay the Sentinel tax. The offer then resolves, countering my board wipe, and I get 2 treasure tokens. I then put to stack after paying 1 red of Blasphemous Act, but Mathieu is ready with a Your Temple is under attack, and makes his board indestructible. Everyone else's board is then wiped, with Arja losing 5 and drawing 5 card from the Reaper triggers, and I pass to Max after that. Max casts Reki in his main phase, and then plays Anafenza, drawing from Reki. He passes, and during his end step, he and Mathieu draw from the Truce trigger. Mathieu pays 3 mana for Freed from the Real, and enchants it onto Sokrates with the Aura. Going to combat, the Null Drifter goes at me. I sacrifice the Annihilator trigger, and then take my hit. Moving to his end step, Mathieu discards down to 7. Arja plays a Swamp, and counts up his mana. He starts his turn off with a Disciple of Griselbrand, and once it resolves, plays out a Task Force. Once that's out, he moves for another piece of the combo with Warrior Encore, and with that on the stack, I respond by casting Terminate and targeting the Task Force. It gets taken out, and the Warrior then resolves. Arja then casts Lightning Greaves, and he moves to equip it onto the Warrior. This has Mathieu responding, activating the Dais and removing some counters so he can exile the Lightning Greaves. Arja also gets to draw a card, and with pretty much everything he did this turn being answered, Arja passes turn. My upkeep is quite quick, as I lose one and make a zombie army token on my upkeep. I then cast a professional Facebreaker and pass after it resolves. Max plays Yavimaya Cradle of Growth as his land for turn, and follows up with Sapphi, Eric's daughter. Once she's out, he brings out his commander, Havi Allfather, drawing from both spells thanks to Reki, and then having both of them come in with a counter thanks to Bard class. He also gets to bolster one twice with Anafenza, and he then moves to combat. This has him swinging Anafenza at me, and Reki at Arja. Arja takes the hit, while I block with my army token. Max then moves to his end step, drawing a card from the Truce with Mathieu. Mathieu's got a Reliquary Tower for turn, and pays 2 for an Azorius Signet. Going to combat, the Null Drifter heads at Arja, who sacrifices his Bauble, and then takes 4. Arja's main phase has Sauron Vengeful Bloodlord coming in, and he downticks the Walker to target Task Force to try and pick it back. With the targeting on the stack, I use Rakdos Charm and pick the mode to exile Arja's graveyard. Never one to let a hiccup stop him though, Arja then casts an Angelic Protector, which prompts a response from Mathieu. Once more he activates the Dais, exiling the Warrior Encore. The Protector then resolves, and we see Shuko coming in, and he moves to equip onto the Protector. With that on the stack, Mathieu, assuming Arja has a land in hand that he can play to sacrifice the Protector later on, puts to stack a Mystic Confluence, and targets the Disciple to bounce it, and draw a card twice. This resolves, and the Shuko is then equipped. Arja then passes, and during his end step, I cast Dig Through Time after delving away some cards from my graveyard. I lose 1 and make an army on my upkeep, and then play and crack a Polluted Delta to go and find an island. Going to combat, the Facebreaker goes at Mathieu, who uses Sokrates to fog it, and we draw instead. I then move to cast the flavorful One Ring, gaining protection from everything until my next turn. I then activate the ring, putting a burden counter onto it, and drawing a card. I then play that card, which is Jingataxis. Max has an Altar of Dementia, a card that is never played to nefarious ends, and follows up with Ilharg the Razeboar, drawing a card from Reki from that. Max then sacrifices Sapphi to her own ability to have Havi come back the next time he hits the graveyard, and he then sacrifices Havi to mill Mathieu. This creates an infinite mill loop, where he's able to take out both Mathieu and Arja's libraries, but I'm protected at least until my next turn. But once the libraries hit the graveyards, Max then passes turn, with Mathieu losing on his end step because he can't draw from his own Truce trigger. Arja's turn is quite quick as he tries to draw, fails to, and loses the game. I lose protection on my turn, and Max sacrifices Sapphi to her ability on my upkeep and targets Havi. With that on the stack, I cast Chaos Warp and target the Altar of Dementia. This has Max responding by sacrificing Reki, milling me for 4, and Havi's trigger brings back Arbaz. Arbaz deals 1 to me as it comes in, and gains Max 1 life. He then sacrifices Ilharg, milling me for 7, and brings back Perforos. With Perforos coming in, Arbaz triggers again, gaining Max 1 and dealing me 1, and with that ability on the stack, I respond by tapping the One Ring to add a burden counter to it and draw 2. Sadly there weren't any answers, and Max then needs only sacrifice Havi again to bring back a legendary creature to take me out, not to mention that the One Ring and invasion triggers still hadn't damaged me yet, and I know when I'm beat. Game review time. This was an awesome game, which is probably something I say in a lot of these reviews, but I really felt it for this one. There was so much interaction, there were 2 combo decks that were able to get shut down at various points, and although a combo deck did win in the end, I think there was so much interaction in this game that it really was okay. I will say that my favorite card was probably that Fairy Mastermind. As you can tell, I drew a whole new hand plus an extra card for only 2 mana, which is just fantastic. Other than that, even though I had an answer to the combo, I'm pretty sure no matter what, I was going to get taken out by Max. My low life total coupled with the fact that I really didn't have any blockers meant that even if the Chaos Warp resulted in my favor, I was probably getting taken out during combat step. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, but it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.